Konnichiwa mina, this is Isaac here, and welcome back to Isaac Reviews 2022. I'm gonna be honest, I was not looking forward to the subject of today's review, Paws of Fury: The Legend of Hank. Not only because I knew I'd have to watch it in a theater full of loud and obnoxious children, which was the case in the theater I saw it at, but also because it seemed to perfectly fit the criteria for one of those movies that only enforces the stereotype of animation being a kid's genre. Plus, the animation looked pretty bad, but I'll go more in depth on that later. Anyways, I saw it on Friday, and yeah, big shocker, it sucked. Hard. The biggest reason as to why it sucked was something I expected out of it before it even came out, and that is that it's boring and generic as hell, heaven, and everything in between. I mean, you can make a generic story work with some good execution, but the story definitely wasn't well executed here, so the experience overall was pretty forgettable. I knew exactly what would happen really early into the film. Barely any of the side characters were all that interesting or had any worthwhile development, especially Michelle Yeoh's character, who only felt like she was there for furry bait, and the humor was really bad. Basically, there's 4 types of jokes you could expect from Paws of Fury: unfunny toilet jokes, unfunny pop culture references, unfunny fourth wall breaks, and unfunny meta humor. And all of them were, well, not funny. Oh, and did I mention that this movie has a commentary on racism? Now, yes, I don't normally like discussing stuff like race, sex, religion, and politics on this channel, mainly since it can get me into trouble if I'm not careful, but since these themes on prejudice are explored in the film, I suppose I'll just bring them up really quick and why I find them to be rather poorly handled. Basically, the way the movie's commentary is presented is that most people will become racist due to being taught those sort of bigoted beliefs by people like their family. While yes, that is unfortunately true, the movie kinda hammers in this sort of stuff, especially when Hank first arrives in a town that's extremely prejudiced towards dogs. Hey, animated talking animal movies released in the 2020s, I think it's pretty noble what you're trying to do to raise awareness for a serious issue and all, but remember one of the fundamentals of storytelling: show, don't tell. A little subtlety wouldn't hurt, you know? But whatever, this is just a minor commentary in the film, so I probably shouldn't get too caught up in complaining about it. How about I complain about some other stuff instead? Anyways, I guess it's worth mentioning that the characters were also pretty bad. As I already mentioned, barely any of the side characters had any real bearing on the plot besides being prejudiced towards Hank, who himself is a pretty annoying a-hole. His mentor is also unlikable and even somewhat spineless at times, and the villain is both really generic and really obnoxious. I mean, the voice acting was fine, but the characters were definitely nothing special. But going back on what I said about the animation looking like crap, maybe I should follow up on that statement and mention how the animation was. Well, it was pretty mediocre, actually. Outside of some really cool scenes of both stylized and hand-drawn animation, the CGI used for the film did look really cheap and low quality. I mean, it's nothing necessarily bad or anything, especially compared to something like The Adventures of Buck Wild, and I will give the animation here that it is pretty smooth and there were some fun moments to be found, especially during the action scenes, but that's just about it for the animation. And that's also just about it for important stuff I have to say about Paws of Fury: The Legend of Hank, because overall, while it's not the worst thing out there, it is still a pretty bad movie. Despite having a few cool scenes and some okay voice acting, it still supplied a tiresomely predictable script, unmemorable and sometimes unlikable characters, half-baked social commentary, weak animation, and eye-rollingly painful humor. Obviously, for my recommendation, I'd say to just wait for it to come out on Paramount+, but reserve it for kids younger than 8 years old. Anyone else is bound to not have a good time. Oh, and also, before the movie would start, a Big Nate short would play called Bad Hamster, which centers around a fever dream Nate and his friends have where Chad's pet hamster, who sounds like Terry Crews, would get revenge on Chad for always having him in his pocket. It was there, I guess. I guess it matched the tone of the Paramount Plus show, but it still felt pretty whatever overall, even though I am a massive fan of the books. But as for Paws of Fury, there's nothing more I have to say about it, so now all I have to do is give it a rating. Well, with that review over with, my next one will be of Netflix's The Gray Man. I figured that since I haven't seen too many of their other releases this year, I should try and branch out a little, but I will admit that this one does just look like another generic action flick, even if the Russo brothers are attached. Anyways, arigato for watching this episode. Make sure to like and subscribe for more garbage like this, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!